My name is Lane Baker, and I'm going to be doing a critical analysis of the fourth critical response that we had to do in the second option of that, which was talking about Gaga's subversive revisionist techniques in terms of mythology and comparing that to a different poetic text that we had to read for this week. So the poetic text that I chose to use was Margaret Atwood's poem, primarily because I like Margaret Atwood a lot. I got the opportunity to see her recently downtown, actually, and I just really liked her poem about the siren and the way that she used revisionist techniques with the mythological concept of the siren. So the siren in Greek mythology, it's primarily in Greek mythology, but it's in Roman mythology as well, um, is constructed as this vixen, like evil female character, where she would lure sailors out for essentially malicious purposes to use her songs to kill them. And it's largely constructed, especially in the Odyssey, with a negative perspective towards the siren and that the men were the victims in this interaction. I thought it was really interesting that Atwood took the persona of the siren and really revised the perspective of that, in which the men were, the evil or ignorant or like bad person in this relationship, especially where she cites that the men on the ship would see the skulls of their beached companions but still jump to her song, right? So in this relationship, she's revising the the protagonist and the antagonist, who's good and bad. So the men in this relationship are dumb, essentially. They're seeing what's happened and they're continuing to go for it, when she is just singing her song and the consequences are what they are, essentially. And I thought it was also really interesting that when she's speaking of the siren song towards the end of the poem, she's talking about how it's really just saying, help me, in that it's asking men for their assistance, right? So I think this is really applicable to daily life as well, where a man will always want to, be the knight that comes to the woman's rescue, and the women can't do anything for themselves. So the siren song is help me, meaning that she's using this sexist relationship of men wanting to come to the aid of women to actually lead to the demise of men, right? So instead of her being this evil, malicious character that's killing men for no reason, she's using this subversive interpretation to combat the sexism of, men always needing to come to women's aid, where she's taking that and using it to empower herself rather than, to be the victim of that, essentially. And I thought that really went along well with Gaga's subversive use of the Zeus swan image in her video, right? So Zeus takes the form of a swan to arguably rape Leda, and she instead takes on that form, right? So she is essentially taking the power away from like the male rapist in this situation, and she is using this form to arguably maybe be desirable or sexy, like going along with her adoption of Venus, and what being desirable, what being sexy means, especially in terms of like her having a non-traditional appearance or sexuality or things like that. But she's really taking the power away from men being dominant in any sort of sexual relationship, or her not having the agency to do those things herself. So I think both of the two really did an excellent job of, taking these mythological constructs where the men were essentially dominant or the men were protagonists in any sort of situation, and really reversing it, in the sense that the women were actually the people who were empowered, and that the men were the people who were at, you know, um, the mercy of women. So I thought that was really interesting and super awesome, especially to see, you know, a really popular, author and both a really popular pop star being able to, take something that's maybe not as accessible for most people and revise that into something that is really translatable for everyone in the 21st century.